the second time today, and hopefully everybody can hear us. I got Kris Bennett here with me. I'm Chad Decker, and we got the infamous Alex Ortiz here from coming live to us from Seattle. Alex, you want to say hi to the...
Not infamous or famous.
Not infamous, not infamous. The legendary Alex Ortiz, live from Seattle. Hey, Alex, how we doing, man?
Good to be here, guys. Thanks so much for having me. This will be fun.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Alex, why don't you want to get started here and kind of tell the folks real quick kind of what your background is, who you are, and how you got into blockchain.
Awesome. So, like many of us, I'm a person who's just deeply curious. Fell madly in love with blockchain about a year ago. Started reading about it, and quite quickly deduced this technology is going to have a very positive impact throughout humanity, and I want to be part of it. So prior to that, I got a neuroscience degree in college. Thought I would go into medicine. Decided to go into education instead. Became a school teacher. Taught middle school. Taught high school. Tutored for many years for Princeton Review. And then through the grapevine ended up in business development for Princeton Review, and then for a small software startup in Boston, and then came out to Seattle 2 years ago to sell a service and a work order software platform. And so I've got this love for science and technology. I've got this education background. I've got this business development background. And most recently, I was working for 8 months with a blockchain startup, really cool blockchain startup in the Seattle region called Life ID, leading evangelism efforts. So educating others on the future of self-sovereign identity and what these protocols can do to transform the way we do identity online, and also trying to find partners and other companies that would use this technology to build out new solutions. So I've been really fortunate to have a wonderful community, both here in Seattle and on LinkedIn and elsewhere, to teach me along the way. And I'm just going to be a lifelong learner, and I've decided to plant my flag in the blockchain space.
Awesome. How much did you know about blockchain before Life ID? Or is that the first time you kind of came across it?
So that was the first, I would say that's my first job working in the blockchain industry. But I actually started reading about blockchain last year in October. So all in, it's been just a little bit over a year that I've been in love with blockchain, but I'm never going back now.
There you go. Exciting. It seems to happen. And Kris, we've never done this with you. Why don't you go through a little bit of your background and how you got into it, if you don't mind?
See, you did that wrong. Yeah. Now I got to follow up the really exciting story.
Yeah, I tried to give you a little time to make something up good.
Yeah, okay. I was born to Carney parents. So before I got into blockchain about a couple years ago, I'd spent a little over 20 years in custom solutions development and consulting, just working with the companies that helped build out your custom solution or whatever it might take to help solve a business problem. And at the time, I think like so many people, I just thought blockchain was another word for Bitcoin, and that part of it wasn't all that interesting to me, so I just kind of ignored it. It was kind of on the sidelines. And then I remember reading an article that kind of opened my eyes and showed me that blockchain is so much more than just digital currency. And at the time, I just became like a little child tugging at their parents' sleeve at work. Just saying, hey guys, we got to get into this technology. We got to investigate this. This is going to be big. I got real excited because I remember seeing this kind of thing before. Last time I saw it, it was called .com. The time before that, it was called the PC revolution. Just huge amount of change coming our way. So never could get the company I was with to really go serious on blockchain, but that's okay because fate connected me with a little startup out in California doing some blockchain education, and I got to give up having a real job for a living and travel all around the world and teach people about blockchain. So now I just wake up every day and remind myself that this is what I get to do for a living. It's just a lot of
fun. Awesome. And now you travel in the world teaching it, huh? Pretty wild ride, huh?
It is. It's definitely been a wild ride, but it's a lot of fun, and it's so cool seeing interest in this technology ramp up. Not just here at home, not in your hometown, but really all across the world. People from all different cultures, areas, verticals, industries, really, really just getting excited about blockchain right now. So it's exciting being part of a global phenomenon. And we were kind of joking before we went live that it's going to be fun looking back and remembering when this was such a small community that we could all sit here like this and know each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you were just in India, correct, Kris? How was that experience? First time?
Yeah, first time. Hopefully not the last. That was just the trip of a lifetime. Very, very interesting place to see. I don't care what your daily commute looks like. As bad as it is, it's not nearly as bad as it is over there. I think the most traffic I've ever seen in my life, but it's crazy. It all works, and just absolutely kind, generous people, just very, very excited about blockchain, and really, really, really made me feel at home being a guest in their country. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting that we're getting these opportunities, across the world to go and share these things with all these people. So um, anybody that's out there, feel free to reach out to us anytime from anywhere in the world. We have we have a global audience right now working on this project, that's completely collaborative. So it's a very exciting time. If you guys don't mind, let's jump into some news articles and see and touch on some topics here. The first article that I wanted to bring up was by Tony Reval it was a Forbes article. Is blockchain a solution for securing centralized ID databases? The article starts with universal IDs have gained the attention of many governments. The sentiment is that universal IDs could help counter terrorism, increase national security, deter ID fraud, and make the lives of citizens easier. What are your guys' thoughts on universal IDs? Have you guys looked into this at all, or what are your thoughts on having a universal ID through the government?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that I think identity. So one of the reasons I went into the self-sovereign identity space as my first blockchain job is because it seemed to me like identity was this little piece of the blockchain table that would impact the rest. And one of the things that I've gained an appreciation for over the last year has been just how much of our modern life is lived in interfaces that require identity. So you think, in the mid 90s when the internet started to take off, very few people, relatively speaking, used web services, used websites, used applications that were on the web. In the last 25 plus years, that number has grown precipitously. So now we've got, like, most Americans use the internet, and something like half of all humans use internet-based services. And a lot of those services are accessed in some capacity with credentials that are connected to your identity. So identity is becoming this hugely important thing in not only the offline world, but also the online world. And with that have come a lot of security related headaches. And so, just starting from a place of identity is really central to the human experience. And in this digital world, that's becoming even more so. And so, baselining on that, I think making sure that we are doing identity in a way that is secure, that reduces risk for individuals, that reduces the likelihood of fraud and all these other bad things is really obviously a really good thing. But then there's this challenge of how do you architect systems that actually have to do with identity, and that creates actually additional problems. And I don't know enough about some of the centralized approaches to national ID. Maybe we can get into that in a little bit, some of the pitfalls. But I just think we're at a time where we have to have really important conversations about digital identity and how to do it right. What are your thoughts, Kris?
Yeah, traveling back from India, I had a layover in Germany, and someone in line dropped their passport, and so there was a a few moments of panic just trying to connect the gentleman who dropped his passport back with the passport. It just kind of hit me that for all the technology we have, about to step into the millimeter body scanner, we're still managing identity just with this tiny little paper booklet. And it just kind of seemed a little bit archaic. And boy, you think about it, if you just misplace or lose that one piece of paper, that one tiny paper booklet, what kind of havoc that can wreak in your life. So, yeah, I think there's absolutely got to be a better way. I think, like so many things, the technology's there and it's ready. The real time consuming part and what the real work boils down to is just getting all the people into a room to talk about how we're actually going to use it and come up with a standard and adopt it and implement it. But yeah, I personally, this may upset some of the conspiracy theorists, but I kind of look forward to living in a world where I can just wake up and walk out the door. I don't need to have keys in my pocket or a wallet full of credentials and ID cards and payment cards. Everything's just tied into some kind of digital online universal ID. So I'm excited about that personally.
So you're saying advancements in, biometric technologies and like facial recognition and also blockchain-based identity technologies all integrated to create this experience where you're just seamlessly going through the world?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm old enough now that it's never not going to feel weird to just wake up and walk out of the house and not have anything in my pocket. But I'm absolutely excited to give it a try.
Change is always a little weird. My grandma still writes checks and uses these debit cards, so I think it's definitely a generational thing that we'll have to get used to. But when you grow up with the technology, it's a little easier to understand it and not be afraid of it. What do you, Kris? What with this central ID? What does this look like? Do you think it's just one form of identification that you own the records to, or is it ran through multiple parties? How do you envision this looking in your crystal ball there?
Well, predicting the future is a very risky business, but
this is being recorded, so
so no pressure, right?
Yeah.
No, I think what makes it tough is, the concept of identity itself is so vastly different depending on who you ask. So you look at what's going on over in Europe with GDPR and the impacts that has on identity as a concept versus some of the things they're able to do in the Middle East or even in Australia, where identity has a much different concept. So I think it really first entails us sitting down and just coming to a common global definition about what is identity, what constitutes an identity, how can that be stored and managed. Certainly with things like GDPR and blockchain, we have to be careful. Make sure that we're not storing any data we shouldn't be storing on chain where it's permanent. But if architected correctly, I think blockchain can be a really interesting layer to demonstrate compliance and to potentially prove a negative, show that you don't have data about someone on file anymore, which is a very difficult class of problem to solve traditionally. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. There's a group over in the Middle East right now, my city, who's working on digital identity solutions. And they've rolled out a series of smart kiosks to help workers and visitors get into buildings around the UAE a little bit easier. And they've estimated that just by helping people gain access to a building, having something faster than a key card or a security guard or something like that, they can save over $150 million a year just in speeding up that process and making it more efficient. So definitely an area poised for growth, I think.
Hey, Kris, you touched on something really important there, which is around having a conversation about what constitutes identity, for example, as a starting point. And there are actually a few communities in the identity space that have been having those conversations for quite a long time. So Internet Identity Workshop, Rebooting Web of Trust, a lot of the folks over at the World of Web Consortium, W3C, on the Community Credentials Group and the Verifiable Claims Working Group, and others that I've been talking about, what is digital identity How do we ensure that identity credentials are managed securely? These are big conversations and big topics that then inform how identity and access management systems are actually designed and implemented. And so I do want to highlight that there is a lot of that conversation happening, and several governments throughout the world have been, like in Canada, there are certain organizations that have been exploring how do we do identity in a way that creates less risk for citizens and creates less overhead for the organizations and the public agencies that are keeping track of identity and access management credentials, right? And so exploring things like self-sovereign identity as a way to give citizens and users some of that control without compromising the security. Going back to the article, Chad, which you referenced, I read the article, and I think the article did a nice job of striking a balance and saying the centralized approach to managing identity has certain pitfalls, certain weaknesses, right? Anytime you have a single database that stores a lot of information about users, that creates a lot of risk for users, and it makes it really attractive for maleficent actors to try to gain access to that, to then go do things with those credentials. But can blockchain-based technologies like self-sovereign identity be used to securely give users a way to fragment different credentials about their identity and make it a lot harder for bad actors to access that information, because there isn't, in this coming future, any centralized store of all that data. And so what I think the article did a good job of is painting both the importance of identity, digital identity, some of the security challenges of doing that in a centralized way, and then planting a seed around how blockchain-based technologies can help. But it didn't go very far into actually proposing a solution, because I think a lot of this tech is still really emerging, and there are a lot of things to solve between now and then.
Yeah, and so kind of going back to our conversation we had before we went live here, right, about like how big is the blockchain space, how many people are into it. I think we're probably getting pretty deep here in this conversation. It's a very exciting conversation that has to be had, right? Could one of you guys go through, though, for somebody that's first coming into blockchain right now, and this is completely brand new to them, and kind of break down why there's so much excitement around blockchain and identity. For instance, in India, they have a centralized point of identity control, and they had a leak, which was a very bad thing, and now the information is out there, and there's misuse. Could you guys go through and explain a little bit on a very basic level why everybody's so excited about this? What blockchain provides to identity and the possibilities? I think everybody excited that has a better understanding of blockchain than probably we do.
Sure. So I'll start very briefly and pass the baton to you, Kris. So I am someone who, when I'm learning something that I don't know anything about, I like to approach it with a process of sorts, right? So over the last year, I've spent a lot of time, say, reading about cryptography on Sundays, because I recognize that to make sense of what makes blockchain-based technology so exciting, I need to understand this security layer that makes that possible. And there are a lot of cryptographic protocols and cryptographic suites that secure a lot of that back-end infrastructure of something like the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network. And so as part of that process, what my brain has sort of started to hang its hat on is, the mental model of when is a centralized database system appropriate to solve certain problems, when is a distributed database system appropriate, and when is a system that is both distributed and decentralized ideal, right? And so Bitcoin is an example of a database system that is both distributed and decentralized. And so part of what I think is the source of excitement around blockchain technologies is there's a class of problems that can only be solved if you are using architectures that are distributed and decentralized. And Bitcoin kind of showed how you build a system like that for the purpose of preventing the ability to double spend financial transactions, and without needing a central clearinghouse for those transactions. And so I know that goes a little bit narrow in scope in terms of how I'm answering this question, but it's why is blockchain technology exciting? Because if we implement distributed and decentralized database technologies well, we may be able to solve a variety of problems that today we don't have solutions for. So that's sort of my starting answer.
Great, that was perfect. Kris, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd throw into there, first of all, agree completely with what Alex said. If you look at cryptocurrencies at Bitcoin and kind of version 1 or blockchain 1.0, all that only really works because of the anonymity provided by the solution. As we start to look at blockchain 2.0 and some of the things beyond cryptocurrency that we can do, what we find out is that anonymity isn't necessarily a good thing in a lot of those use cases. Removing centralized authorities can still be very desirable, but it becomes important to have safe and secure ways to track and manage identity. I think medical history is a great example of this. Wouldn't it be great if well, maybe great's not the right word, but wouldn't it be beneficial if you're on the other side of the world, you're on vacation, you get sick, you end up in the hospital, and there's a safe, secure way that you can share your complete and full medical history with the physician that's treating you. Currently, that's not something that we can do very easily. That information is very, very siloed. And a lot of the hesitation to doing something like that is we don't want to enable any one centralized provider to have that much control over that kind of information. So we don't want to set up an Experian, for example, for our health information. Just having a group like that oversee our credit rating is a little bit too much for a lot of people. So I think identity is really exciting because it's just this cross-cutting concern to so many cool things we can do with blockchain beyond just cryptocurrency and digital money. So I think that's why there's so many interesting groups right now taking so many varied approaches on this, and it's really exciting to follow and to see what they're coming up with, because I think that's when we're really going to start to see blockchain explode into the mainstream.
Very exciting. Alex, when you're involved in so many of these awesome communities that are just completely amazing and working on this every day and trying to find these solutions, what do you think in 10, 20 years, what does this look like? What's everybody's vision of a self-sovereign identity? Can you give some examples or kind of tell us what the vision is?
Yeah, so well, going back to the crystal, let me peer into my crystal ball.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the more time I spend just learning about the problems and the proposed solutions and the technologies that are being built and the various approaches, the more appreciation I have for how hard it is to just build technology that works well, and is secure and then scales, right? So I think we're still so early that all those boxes haven't yet been checked in terms of many blockchain-based technologies, not just self-sovereign identity technologies that rely on a blockchain backend. So I will start there. But I think part of the vision is where you get to a world where you have both the convenience and the security of being able to say, digitally speaking, I can present to you some piece of information about me in a way that is compartmentalized, right? So that instead of handing over an all or none list or a set of attributes about Alex, I have an application that enables me to segment each of those things that make me my name, my date of birth, my eye color, my height, who my employer is, where I live, just make a list of 100 things that I need to just digitally move through the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to have a place where I can store those things, but they're segmented, and I can, on a case-by-case basis, grant access to whomever's requesting that information. There are so many problems that are technical problems that need to be solved before that's possible. But just speaking generally, I'm looking forward to the mainstreaming of technologies that on the back end work really well are blockchain based, but on the front end, the users don't necessarily know it's blockchain, right? Like I like to give this example where I love Uber. I use it often. 4 touches of the screen, and I've got a car coming for me. When you look at Uber's engineering blog and they describe the backend infrastructure to make that possible, it's super complex. They use over a dozen different databases. It's a hybrid cloud model. There's data analysis being done in real time. But I don't, as a user, I don't care as long as it works and it's secure and it protects me. What I think will end up happening in the next 5, 10, 15 years is that companies do build out applications that have blockchain backend. Some of them might have cryptocurrency and smart contract backends, but on the front end, it's just creating new use cases. I can't think of them, right? If it's 1995, can you foresee streaming from Netflix or using LinkedIn? No, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely, and I think that's the thing to remember here with trying to predict the future is it's not. It's more of a guess and a vision of what the dream is rather than knowing exactly, being able to name exactly how it works, and who's doing it, and how it works. But it's fun to think about. Okay, here's the dream that we have this world we live in that you can give information only as needed, and you have the ability to know that it's secure, and not vulnerable in one centralized place.
Totally. And going back to Kris, you had a wonderful example just around medical records. So a year ago, my mom had a small health scare. And so she scheduled an appointment with a specialist. And so then she showed up and it turned out they didn't have all the information they needed to run the test on her. So she had to go back to her doctor and get the information she needed and then reschedule and come back. And I think it was something like she needed a CD-ROM, if I remember correctly, with some of that information. Maybe that's not correct, the particulars. But, I just thought how much stress that created for my mom and the rest of us. And the root problem there, or root problems there around how do we give my mom the ability to transfer information from Dr. A to Dr. B securely, right? And so I do think some blockchain-based architectures will be pieces of the solutions to that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, I love what you said because it resonates so strongly with my own belief that things start to get real exciting when we start talking about solutions without using the word blockchain, when we're just focused on the benefits that it provides to the end user or to the consumer or to the business implementing it. So that's kind of one of my telltales too. If you can pitch me on your blockchain idea and not use the word blockchain, or maybe just use it once or twice in the opening slide, then yeah, you've got my attention.
So if I ever try to raise money from you for a startup or something, now I know blockchain, 2 words, that's it, 2 times.
Yep. Just once on the opening slide. And, yeah, you could probably sweet talk me out of 10 or 20 big ones.
It's really no different than the .com in the .com days, though, right? Everybody wanted to sell the fact that they were using the internet, that they had a website, and I think same thing's kind of happening with blockchain right now. But I think the really cool thing is we're starting to move past that. I think we're starting to see actual solutions be sold rather than just catchphrases or keyword buzzwords, right? But speaking of buzzwords and people jumping into the race, let's kind of move into the second article that I sent out was AWS enters the blockchain market with 2 dedicated services. So Amazon Web Services has announced they announced a couple different services, but the key one I want to talk about here is the Amazon Managed Blockchain. It supports 2 open sources of blockchain frameworks, Ethereum and Hyperledger Fabric. Right off the top, Kris, what do you think of Amazon even throwing their hat into this ring? I know for a long time they stayed very silent on it. They didn't want to say a whole lot, and they pretty much everything but coming out and saying they had any kind of solution. So what do you think of them throwing their hat in the ring?
I think it's huge. Personally, I'm very excited about it. I think it shows that some big players out there in the market are starting to see that the word blockchain means a lot more than just cryptocurrency. That there's some services plays behind it. Of course, it's great for Ethereum and Hyperledger, both as platforms. There's just so much value I think businesses can get out of experimenting with these platforms and the architectures they enable, especially Ethereum. I don't think see as many private Ethereum instances as we should. Really kind of an underutilized tool. So I think anything Amazon can do to make it easier for people to dip their feet in and play around on blockchain, the better. And certainly, I don't think Amazon would be making this kind of investment if they thought that this technology was going away or wasn't something significant. So I'm excited, but I would love to hear from Alex on this one.
Yeah, to tack on that, I agree. I think that we're still in a phase in blockchain where it's still so new, and there are different approaches, and the word is a pretty broad word that encapsulates a lot of different things, right? So let's talk about Hyperledger Fabric, which in my mind is a distributed database system that is not fully decentralized, right? And is really well suited to environments where you want to have strong identity and access management controls around who participates, who is able, which devices and which clients and which users can write data to the system and read data from the system, right? Something like Exonum, which is similar to Hyperledger Fabric, but uses a different consensus mechanism, practical Byzantine fault tolerance, if I'm not mistaken. That there will be some environments where that blockchain makes a lot of sense, or that distributed ledger makes a lot of sense. Cook County, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, used the Exonum blockchain for a pilot around land titles. So when land is the ownership of land transfers, how do you keep track of that in an immutable way, and in a way where only certain participants can write, but anyone can read? And then once a day, that particular ledger, you're able to take a snapshot of the state, run it through a one-way hash function, and then store that hash, anchor it to the Bitcoin network for added security. And so, when you read about these different architectures and the different industries in which they're being used, or the different use cases to which they're being applied, I think, for me at least, I gain an appreciation for there's no one size fits all when it comes to distributed systems or decentralized systems. And so just like you have hybrid cloud environments where certain data is kept on premises, right? And then other data is stored in cloud databases through AWS or Azure or whatnot. I think we're going to move towards a world eventually where different distributed ledgers and different blockchains are used for different parts of different businesses. And so going back to Amazon, which is offering now both something called Quantum Ledger DB, QLDB, and they're very transparent about it. It is a centralized, immutable data log, right? And so here we have a centralized database system that might be used for certain things, even as that same organization using Amazon Managed Services might deploy something on Ethereum, right? Ethereum private potentially. Or maybe I'm using Azure and I'm using Quorum, right? But it's a cloud-based deployment of Quorum. So I think it's important to offer the market different solutions. Some will be distributed only, some will be distributed plus decentralized, and some will continue to be centralized. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, Kris, I know you touch on this a little bit. Do you want to dive into? I think you're big on the whole hybrid, kind of providing hybrid solutions. Do you want to kind of go through that for the folks? Tell us what your theory is and how you see that blending.
Yeah, and I think Alex was hitting on that a bit too. It's a misconception I see out there way too much, which is because we've now evolved a decentralized architecture for our solutions, that is somehow a replacement for doing things either in a centralized or distributed fashion. And it's not. It's just another tool in our toolbox. And there are times when taking a very centralized, controlled approach is still going to be the right way to go. There are times when taking more of a distributed approach is still going to be the right way to go. So these technologies are definitely not all or nothing. And I think that's a very important point to remember. And I think some of the most interesting use cases we see right now are the use cases which involve blockchain and some conventional technology. So if you're looking around your organization, how can we start playing around with blockchain? Well, don't look at replacing a system and rebuilding it completely on blockchain. Leave it in place and just add a little blockchain to it. So how can we add some blockchain functionality to our ERP system, to our HR system, to our CRM system? You'll find that you get a lot better value for the time and effort invested when you start with something that already works, provides business value, and you're just looking at making some incremental improvements. So I'm a big fan of taking any kind of hybridized approach. In fact, as Alex was speaking to, Hyperledger itself, it gets talked about as a blockchain solution, but there are databases in there too. There's mutable storage. There are updates and deletes. So Hyperledger is a great example of a whole platform that's built on that hybrid approach and enables you to do some things that you couldn't do just with a pure blockchain or ledger only platform like Ethereum. So yeah, my long-winded way of saying that blockchain really goes best when you can combine it with as many other technologies as possible.
Yeah, very, very exciting. I think even the fact that the Hyperledger Foundation and the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, they've joined forces and they've come together saying, "Hey, look, this isn't a one answer solution. I think we can all work together to find multiple solutions that work, and depending on the use case, resolve a lot of different problems and also utilize technology we already have. It's not throw it away." And I think I get chats every single day on our website or emails saying, "I want to completely rebuild a CRM I'm an accountant and I want to utilize only blockchain. And where do I start?" And they're very hyper focused and they don't know the single thing about blockchain or even understand kind of some of the key principles of a decentralized solution. So I think the key is to start to kind of understand a little bit about everything, and also need to understand the current technology and what it has to offer as well. Which is, yeah.
You said something there that it triggered something in me, so I'm
Absolutely.
excited.
Jump in.
Which is, we're now coming on 9 years, close to 10 years, where the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network has existed in the world, right? And it's been shown to be secure. And now, we're entering a phase where it's like, remember when cloud first came along and there was a lot of trepidation among some enterprises and industries about using cloud services? There was a very heavy on-prem kind of perspective. And now we're getting to a point where, cloud technologies is fairly mainstreamed in some circles. I think there's a natural length of time or period of time that we have to go through to adjust to new technologies and new possibilities. And there's some trust that has to be established in the market that, okay, this is not as scary as we thought it was. This works. It is secure. Bitcoin is an exemplar of that. The Bitcoin blockchain is an exemplar of that from a security standpoint. So I wonder if over the next, 10 years or so, we're going to have more developers building applications that leverage the security of the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, right? Where Andreas Antonopoulos, for instance, I've started reading Mastering Bitcoin, second edition. And Andreas says something really wonderful, which is you should think of Bitcoin, the currency, as sort of the first application built on top of the Bitcoin network, right? And the reason I love that is because it's easy to think that was always going to be the main use of Bitcoin, sending electronic transactions that are currency ones. But imagine a world where Bitcoin is used as an anchor of trust, right? And more applications are built that work with Bitcoin. Ethereum being a virtual machine, the whole concept of this is something you build applications on top of. Those apps require a token, in the form of ETH and others, and the apps will only work if you feed those smart contracts those tokens. I think we're going to see some similar things long term on Bitcoin, and so then that gets to the heart of which problems in our enterprise or in society can we only solve if we build them on top of this new layer, whether that's Bitcoin or Ethereum or another.
Absolutely.
You get me on jazzed up. You got me on jazzed up.
I like it. I like it. And then it kind of really leads us into to our next topic. And I wanted to touch on this real quick. I had posted a video on LinkedIn that got good traction, and I just thought it was pretty funny. And it was Bill Gates on David Letterman, just really talking about the internet. And you touched on something right now with Bitcoin. It's kind of the first application. And Bill Gates said he used the word electronic mail, which I hadn't heard in a long time. I don't think I've heard anybody say electronic mail in 20 years. But I think it's key to understand that this is the first. We are in the very, very early stages. But what can we, looking at the Bill Gates and David Letterman video, what can we learn from that and kind of our own naivety and misunderstanding? Should we come at this with a little bit of an open mind and try to really understand what the technology is, rather, or is it easier just to make fun of it and let everybody else do the work?
What are your thoughts, Kris?
Hey, it's always easier to let someone else do the work, right? No, I think the pattern that we see is the technology shows up first, and then we kind of sit around and we wonder, what is it good for? Why should I care? Why is it significant? And then a few decades go by and we look back and we realize what short-sighted questions those were. So I think, electronic mail is a great example. Why would I want to use email? If I want to send an electronic message, I have a fax machine. We look back on that today and that seems comical. The internet used to be just an enthusiast thing. Now I don't think any of us could imagine life without it. In fact, just the way that we're communicating now, electricity. In the days before Michael Faraday worked out electromagnetic fields, electricity was it was just a novelty. It was something that used to be you'd have tricks on stage. It was just kind of something people would play with for entertainment, watch the sparks fly, etc. It wasn't until Faraday came along and worked out that we could actually harness the power of electrons to do our bidding. So we see this all the time, and I think that's just where we're at with blockchain right now. We know there's a lot of potential there. We're still working out what the best use cases are, where it's a good fit, where it's not a good fit. Of course, we've got a lot of people who just like they wanted to cling to the fax machine or clinging to a database and saying, well, I could do all this with a centralized database. But I think in 10 to 20 years, we'll look back and some of these conversations might appear a bit comical then. We'll have to wait and see.
Agreed. So there's something about the human spirit that is pretty enduring, which is that we never stop tinkering. Our curiosity never ends, right? And so we tend to persist through failure, and we tend to persist through skepticism. And there are some failed attempts to build technologies that are blockchain-based right now. Sure, but that's part of all innovation. It's all part of the research and development process across any human enterprise. And then there's a fair amount of skepticism still out there about this technology or these technologies, and that's fine. That's the Letterman video is a testament to that. We question when things are new, and we're skeptical about them. And those that believe that new thing actually has promise persist through that skepticism, as Bill Gates did, both on air and then in his work. And so, I'm just not concerned at all that this technology won't end up being really important in the world. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding long term. So we just have to persist, continue to innovate, continue to educate, let those that would make fun of it do so. And then, the work will be what shows what we can do with it down the road.
Absolutely. Now, I'm a history guy, so I love history, and I think the coolest part for me is looking at the human nature and how many times it's repeated itself. Even I think the famous Henry Ford quote: "If I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." And I think that that kind of reigns true. And to the human spirit, like you're talking about, Alex, I think horses worked pretty good for a really long time. But there's people out there that just felt like, hey, there's a better solution. And I think throughout history, we continue to see just continual improvement. And I think we're at a very exciting time. That in 10, 20 years, we're going to look back and see that this cycle of history has repeated itself once again. So I'm excited. Where do you guys feel like we're at in this kind of adoption hype cycle? Do you feel like the hype's died down now and people are diving in? Where do you guys feel like we're at in this in the hype cycle here with blockchain or distributed ledger technology?
I think it's still really early, right? We live in a time where our feeds are optimized based on our tastes. And so I look at LinkedIn and it's showing me stuff about blockchain and about Bitcoin. And if you use Twitter, it's like the same things going on. Even your news feed, if you're logged into Google, the same thing's going on. And so I think that can give us sometimes an overinflated sense of just how much this tech has permeated the world. I think I mean, as an analogy, the total market cap of all cryptocurrencies is something like a fourth of the market cap of Apple right now, right? And so it's like it's still this tiny little thing, and yet there's this just enormous passion for it, and that alone, I think there's something about that discrepancy that's really telling about the long-term potential. Yeah, super early. There's still 99% of the work is still ahead of us.
Exciting, Chris. Where do you think we're at?
Yeah, I absolutely second what Alex said. I think it's just impossible to overestimate how early it still is. I have a little diagram in the slides we use in class because when you start talking to people about blockchain, it's pretty common. One of the responses you get is, "Oh, blockchain. Wow, I'm too late. I'm way too late to the party. I should have gotten involved way back when I could have gotten 1,000 Bitcoin for a nickel, and now I'd be retired on some beach in the south of France." And so I'd like to pull up this diagram, and it's the entire internet in 1977. So it's not more than just a dozen or so connections. And it's interesting to think about. Okay, well, if you didn't get involved in the internet until 1980, because we're about 3.5 years of blockchain actually being an applications development platform, something you can build solutions on top of. So if you didn't get wind of the internet until 1980, maybe 1985, were you too late, or were you still 10, 15, maybe 20 years too early? And I think that's exactly where we're at with blockchain. So, to anyone watching and thinking about getting involved, but not sure if there's a place for you, or wondering if you're too late, or if your skill set is needed, jump on in, find the piece that interests you, go chase it down, and don't worry about it. It is still very, very early. I think we're starting to see a lot of organizations, just put out the feelers, build some proof of concepts, maybe put together some MVPs, but we have very, very few production deployments we can point to. That's not because the technology isn't going to stay, or it's not going to have huge transformative powers, but it's just early. So, but again, that just makes it, in my mind, a really, really fun time to be getting involved.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your opinions on that. I know it's kind of hard to take a hard line right now and predict the future, but definitely an exciting time. So, without getting too far into that, I'd like to jump into our question of the week, and it comes from Tommy Cooksey, and it's really a two-part question. And Alex, I think you've already looked into it a little bit, and I'm excited to hear your answer. But he asked, of all the chains trying to talk to each other, do you like any one over the other? Polkadot, Cosmos, Interledger, and why? And then the second part of his question is, what do you think of the BIP70 and X509 certificates being used to stop payment channel spoofing? So let's start with the first one, and of all the chains trying to talk to each other, which one do you guys like and why? Or is there a particular one you like, or you just decided that people are working on this?
I'll defer this one. I honestly don't know enough about any of those to have an opinion on any of them.
Kris, pressure's on.
This is going to be a very disappointing
Sorry, Tommy.
I don't either. It's I at least speaking from my own point of view, it is a full-time job for us at Blockchain Training Alliance, just staying up to date on the platforms that we do teach on. So Ethereum, Hyperledger, Corda, etc. So it's not that I know very little about projects like Polkadot or Cosmos for lack of interest, rather just for lack of time. But in general, I'm very supportive of anything that's getting different chains and different platforms to talk to each other and to interoperate. I think that's going to become a necessity as time goes on, because there is no, as we've been talking about, there is no one size fits all blockchain solution. Your small startup company with 20 full-time employees or less may find that a private instance of Ethereum behind your firewall fits your needs just perfect. And you may integrate with someone in your business network who's much larger and has a huge Hyperledger Fabric or Sawtooth deployment. How do you get those platforms to talk? That's definitely going to be a need going forward. So, I'm supportive of anyone doing any work in that space.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason I chose this question is not to dive too deep and stick you guys into a bad spot. I apologize, but I think I had about 4 or 5 different people reach out about interoperability. So Alex, can you touch on what it is first of all, for folks that don't know, and then why you think it's important? It's an important, it's very important work, but can you tell us why and what it is?
Yeah, so I mean, I think interoperability, you can talk about it in a couple of different ways. Is it, I've got 2 different applications, and can the data produced by one, or can these 2 different applications read data from the same source, right? That's one way. Or can they transact with one another even if the applications run on different blockchains? That's another way, to think about this. When you think about, if you consider one way of conceptualizing what smart contracts enable is building applications that will only work if you feed those smart contracts a token or a cryptocurrency of a certain sort. Well, what happens 5 or 10 years from now, or maybe sooner, when we have applications that are killer apps that have been built, that are out there in the market, but they're powered by different underlying blockchains? Then how do you ensure that a cluster of people using application running on blockchain A, cluster of people using applications running on cluster B, they can somehow interact? When I think about interoperability, and I'm still fairly early on in my learning journey, so I never like to overstate how much I currently know. That's how my brain currently thinks about interoperability. Why it's important is because you don't want silos. In, say, like the IoT space, you've got devices from different manufacturers, and they don't necessarily talk to one another. So, just a common example we can all relate to, having different smart devices in our homes, right? And then if you wanted them to communicate with one another, how easy is that to do in a secure way? And so interoperability, I don't know, it's an interesting topic. A part of me thinks it's kind of early. This is my opinion, part of me thinks we haven't even got to the point where there are DApps that are out there in super wide usage. And so interoperability is not yet a massive problem. But then part of me thinks, what we've learned in a lot of contexts in the past, part of why W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, exists is that you need common standards anytime you're developing technologies, say on the web, that are going to be used by a lot of different organizations and a lot of people in a lot of countries, right? And so having those conversations early about ensuring interoperability baked into the cake early on is important. But at a technical level, I think there are still things to resolve.
So Alex, you're telling me you don't think anyone's trying to integrate their Fabric supply chain network with CryptoKitties yet? Come on. No, I think, what's really exciting about this is, again, look back at the internet and at .com. And the internet revolution was not about networking computers together. We'd been doing that for quite some time. It was about networking all the individual networks together. And I think that's why interoperability and blockchain is so exciting, because right now we're just creating the individual island networks. The next phase of this, or the next revolution, is going to be, well, what happens if we start joining all these networks together? I kind of asked it tongue in cheek, but maybe there are some really interesting possibilities that open up if you connect CryptoKitties to General Motors supply chain network, and all of that is integrated into Walmart's food and produce distribution network. Who knows? Certainly, we never would have anticipated all the business models and opportunities that came about when we networked all of these various disparate computer networks together to create this thing called the internet. So it's definitely an exciting area for me personally.
Very exciting all the way around. Hey, Alex, do you have anything that kind of wraps it up for the topics that I had, 3 articles? Do you have anything in particular that you would like to discuss here, or any topics that are off the top of your mind that you'd like to reach out to people on LinkedIn and everything that we share?
I didn't think of anything specific. One of my blockchain friends here yesterday put me onto this quote by Einstein about maintaining a holy curiosity. And the spirit of the quote is around questioning every single day just a little bit, and being curious every single day just a little bit, and trying to unravel the mysteries of life and how things work just a little bit. You do that every single day, and that compounds into, and this comes from Einstein, the word's holy curiosity. It's something that everybody should maintain, this deep curiosity about how things work, and never stopping how much you question, right? I think that is something that we should all of us in blockchain, and just in general, we should just live that way, and constantly be learning, and constantly be curious, and constantly be sharing what we are learning, because then that makes it easier for others to learn faster, right? And so that's how I use LinkedIn as a platform, as a space where I'm just curious, and I'm learning, and I'm grappling with stuff and ideas, and I'm consolidating and synthesizing, and I'm sharing, and I get some of that in return from others. So I just, as a general note, I think the less siloization we have of technologies and also of people, the faster as an industry we're going to grow. And so that spirit of curiosity and a ability to listen to the things others are building, even if they're building applications on other blockchains, right? Like, I think maintaining a blockchain mediumalism, or a Bitcoin mediumalism, or an Ethereum mediumalism, or whatnot, I think that's going to help us all long term. So be curious, constantly be questioning, always be learning, have a generous ear for what others are working on, and come check out what I do on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Kris, do you have any final points you want to throw out there?
Wow, dropping Einstein on us. That's how you get to be infamous. If you wonder. That's where it all comes
I'm not famous.
You are both, my friend. No, the only thing I'll plug is Alex Ortiz. Follow the man. He drops gems like that all the time. Super, super nice guy, and I'm so glad we had him on today. So that's my only plug, is just support Alex.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for having me, you guys.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Thanks for joining us. I highly encourage anybody to follow the amazing and infamous Alex Ortiz on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else they can find you, or should find you, Alex? Go ahead. Sorry.
So on LinkedIn, it's always LinkedIn /in/Alex O Blockchain. And so that's O for Ortiz, my last name, Alex O Blockchain. I'm also on Medium. I don't post as often on Medium as I do almost daily on LinkedIn. But one of the things I may do soon is look back at the last year of me writing and sharing and musing on LinkedIn and consolidate some of that in some long form posts. And if I do that, they'll be on Medium. But you can check out everything I'm up to on both of those.
Awesome.
And obviously, isn't there an organization doing really good work educating the world about blockchain technology called, I can't think of, what's it called? Kris, help me out here.
Oh boy, it's right on the tip of my tongue.
Blockchain Training Alliance.
Just Google blockchain beard guy. That's all you need to know. But I highly encourage anybody out there watching and listening to go follow Alex. I thoroughly enjoy reading all your stuff every day. Your stuff you post on Medium, it's always very insightful. It's inspiring to me to get out there and learn more. So keep up the great work, and I thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, you guys.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks guys.
buddy.
Take care. Ciao.
All right, till next time.
Are you looking to become a certified blockchain solution architect, but you just can't attend one of Blockchain Training Alliance's live 3-day trainings? We have great news for you. Blockchain Solution Architect training is now available on demand. No matter where you are in the world, you can now learn on your own time, at your own pace. This self-paced course is taught by BTA's Chief Learning Officer and lead instructor, Kris Bennett.
Hello, and welcome to the Blockchain Training Alliance's course on blockchain architecture. My name is Kris Bennett. I'll be your instructor. Over the coming hours, we're going to start from the very basics of blockchain and walk you through everything you need to know to start identifying good use cases in the world around you and building compelling blockchain solutions.
With 60 days of access, a course study guide, an exam voucher, all included, our on-demand package is all you need to get certified. Enroll today by visiting blockchaintrainingalliance.com.
Hi guys, it's Ken with the Blockchain Training Alliance, and I'm here to tell you about some major developments that we made in Hyperledger Fabric. We've written a lab guide that teaches you how to go from zero to hero using composer development. This teaches you how to write model files, create transaction processors, write permissions files, and also queries. We don't stop there. We teach you how to package up the business network and deploy it to a REST server. And then we teach you how to secure it using OAuth. And at the very end, we tell you to throw everything away, and we give you a capstone project on how to create a business network from scratch. So if you're interested, go ahead and click the button below.